Welcome back to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and joined by a regular trio throughout this European season of OHaire, Adrian, Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. And Miguel, viewers will want to know what you've been up to for the Christmas period. There was a winter break there. There seemed to be no football. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to be seeing a lot of you, I think, because it's the non-stop Champions League right up until the end of May, start of June.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very busy. I mean, and I suppose with the way modern football is going, a lot of on-pitch stuff, and also a lot of off-pitch stuff. Given, like, I suppose what I have to cover, stuff like the Everton cases, the Forest case. I've actually last week I was in Paris for the UEFA Congress, which I know a lot of people would immediately hear that and switch off, but it is the best way to explain in terms of why we cover it in that way, I suppose, because this basically decides what happens on the pitch. Issues like this, how the game is run, especially when executive presidents, which is what FIFA and UEFA have, are given so much power. So that actually was, without going into too much detail, it was quite a feisty week, actually, especially at the press conference, where Chefrin dropped the bombshell that he's planning to. He didn't say he's confirming that he's planning to not run in 2027, and then took 3 questions and walked off.
Yeah, no, that was a surprise to me, the fact he said that. But yeah, now that you mentioned the 2027 and that he's planning to step down, who knows on that front. Adrian, are you looking forward to the return of the Champions League?
Massively, yeah. I mean, I'm excited. Obviously, from an Arsenal perspective, potentially to have a run in the competition. That'd be nice to get some more big nights at Emirates. But I'll tell you why I'm excited about it. I think it's because I think it's winnable for a lot of the clubs that are left in it. I genuinely do. Obviously, City are the standout, obviously. But if you take them aside and hope they have 1 or 2 off nights, then I do think that we could see a surprise winner or a potentially surprise finalist again. So, yeah, it's going to be quite hard, I think, to predict.
Miguel, you disagree slightly on City?
You've got to take City as, I think, the outstanding default winner. I think I would say, just to pick up on Adrian's, I actually think the Champions League is more winnable for Arsenal than the Premier League is. Just on that very notion that one off night for City can suddenly just cause them to be eliminated in a way that obviously can't happen in the Premier League. So that's where the scope for Arsenal, especially if Arsenal are coming into form, whereas we know in the Premier League, they've probably got to get to 90, 92 points, which is a lot easier said, a lot more difficult than just saying it like that. So I think that's where the scope for Arsenal. But I mean, I think there's a significant distance, especially from the Bayern result at the weekend. There's a significant distance between City and the rest of the pack.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Bundesliga, what's happening there. Incidentally, Arsenal 6.8 currently to win the Premier League, 7.0 Champions League. So Mark has it thereabouts. Their style of play could potentially suit European football like we've seen in the group stages. Mark, excited for the Champions League return?
Yeah, always. I agree with the points the guys have made. It's a very open competition if you look beyond Manchester City, and look, they're very fair and warranted short price favourites, but their price has barely moved since the ball was kicked back in September in this competition, and now they've got arguably the easiest knockout stage draw as well. So you're looking at City at kind of 3.05 from the quarterfinal stage onwards, and if you consider they were hot favourites home and away in both ties against Real Madrid and Bayern Munich last season, they're going to be difficult to stop. But yeah, I think you can pick faults in almost every team in this competition. Bayern certainly aren't the side I expected them to be at this stage of the season when we talked about this outright market back in September. Real Madrid, no Benzema this time around. There's been key injuries to Courtois, Alaba. Bellingham's now picked up an injury which could keep him out for a month or so. So they potentially are weakened. PSG aren't anywhere near where I thought they might be at this stage of the season too. So there's a kind of question mark over then. And then, yeah, you look at Arsenal. You look at teams who could potentially cause Man City problems over 2 legs, and Arsenal will consider themselves a contender based on what they did to City back at the Emirates earlier this season. A few teams beat City in that kind of convincing manner but Arsenal managed, so they have to be a contender, but the price is quite off-putting, isn't it? So I think if you want to have an interest as a reasonable price, you have to look beyond that kind of category of team, and I think Inter Milan need a shout really at around 18 or 19. Obviously, Serie A clubs don't have or haven't tended to to do pretty well in the Champions League for quite some time. But last year, of course, we had the two Milan clubs in the Final Four. Now, Inter did have quite a nice path to the final, but they competed really well with City in that final, and they're making great strides under Inzaghi, dominating in Serie A, so potentially they don't have to concern themselves with sort of fighting on two fronts. They could have that sewn up pretty early. So I think Inter are a danger, but obviously playing Atletico in the last 16 is a bit of a headache for them too. So yeah, I mean, it's all on City at the minute, and if they don't win it, I would be surprised. But it feels like there's an opportunity for an outsider to run them close.
Yeah, 17.0 the field outside the top four. So yeah, open outside. If we could, I could definitely see a surprise, perhaps semi-finalists, or perhaps finalists as we go further on in the competition. The 4 games we're going to cover this week, the 4 games are going to be played because the UEFA split this up over a few weeks. It's Copenhagen City, Leipzig versus Madrid, PSG versus Real Sociedad, and Lazio versus Bayern. Incidentally, if you are watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe completely for free to our YouTube channel to get all our content. And if you're listening on a podcast feed, a 5-star review would be much appreciated. We will start by looking at the prices on the Matchbook Betting Exchange for Copenhagen versus Manchester City. It's Copenhagen 15.0 in the 90-minute odds. Man City 1.25. The draw is available at 7.2. Both teams to score, yes. 2.3, an outlier to what we've been seeing throughout the Premier League and Europe this season. Copenhagen getting a 1 3/4 goal head start at even money, and the goal line here is currently set at 2.5. Overs is 1.64. Adrian, Clarke, we'll start with you. You mentioned outside City it could be competitive, but I'm taking it you're expecting City to take care of business fairly easily here.
You would expect so. I don't think it should be a gimme, but then you look at the history books, and Copenhagen have only lost twice, I think, in 18 Champions League home games. You know, they've taken some pretty good scalps down the years. And City, despite winning the trophy last year, despite winning the treble, haven't won in 5 away games in the Champions League knockouts, which is mad, really, to think about it. They did all the damage, really, in the games at the Etihad. So there's a little anomaly there. But yeah, you'd have to make City overwhelming favourites here. I also think the fact that Copenhagen have really been playing friendlies for the last few months, really, because of the way that their schedule works out, that has to go against them. I think the Atlantic Cup in the Algarve, I'm not sure how much, how valuable a preparation that's going to be to face the reigning holders. So yeah, for that reason, I'm definitely on side with City to win the game. I'm going to go with goals, actually, even though Copenhagen, you might imagine them to try and set up quite cautiously to contain. Not so sure. They're not that watertight at the back, Copenhagen. I think they're in a pretty feverish atmosphere. I think they will go for it when they have opportunities to. They look to score goals. They're just not that good at the back. I think 2 clean sheets in their last 8 domestic league games tells you that that they've got certain issues there. And City in Europe this season have scored loads, haven't they? I mean, I think 25 in 6 group games. They scored 3. I think I'm right in saying they scored 3 in every game of the group stage. So with that in mind, I think that they can go to Copenhagen and probably get 3 again. Maybe not keep a clean sheet, because they haven't kept that many clean sheets, have they, City, in recent times? So yeah, I'm going to go with City and over 2.5 goals rather than go on the unders route. I just think that they're playing so well at the moment. Haaland obviously back in the groove. They're going to want to get the job done in the first leg, so in effect, so they don't have to work too hard at the Etihad Stadium. And I suspect they will get the job done in quite an entertaining game over there in Denmark. Okay,
yeah, currently priced at 183. Miguel, it's also your selection. Anything to add to Adrian's point there? Obviously, good points in Copenhagen. That lack of competitive action is probably going to cost them here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And for me, like touching on what Adrian said, it's that, I suppose, differentiation, or sorry, where the line is here maybe is whether City keep a clean sheet or not. Because you'd almost see that game and think, well, that's a 2-0, 3-0 City away win. But they haven't been all that tight at the back. And equally, I was at both of Copenhagen's games against Manchester United. And even though one of them was obviously very, very narrow, 1-0 at Old Trafford, it was still an extremely open game. The one in Copenhagen itself was absolute chaos. And I think that could just mean that this isn't, well, you'd expect City to get a result that looks kind of extremely professional, 3-1 or say. It just might be a bit more open, mate. Like I don't think it'll be one of those where they just turn up and kind of cleanly come away with a clean sheet and a kind of a relatively comfortable win. I think there'll be just the way the game goes, the way both teams play. There'll be a bit more openness to it, and so yeah, I've gone City and over 2.5 as well.
Okay, Mark, you're coming at it from a slightly different angle, but relatively the same here. But I'm taking it you're going to expect Copenhagen to also make it very difficult for Man City here.
Yeah, I expect so. Anyone who saw their games against Bayern Munich in the group stage can see that this team is more than capable of grinding out and being determined and difficult to beat. They can be quite obdurate when they need to be. And I think perhaps the games against Galatasaray and Manchester United were red herrings, really, because they were the matches that FCK really needed to come out and play and try and win those fixtures. And if you look at the game in Copenhagen when they played United, they were second best by a decent distance before Rashford's red card tipped the balance in their favour and the chaos unfurled, really. But yeah, their group stage was remarkable, really. They took 1 point from their opening 3 games. But even still, they took the lead against Galatasaray and Bayern before being pegged back, and then missed a stoppage time penalty against United on match day 3, which could have earned them a draw. And then they still managed to squeeze their way through, mainly down to Galatasaray and United being incredibly erratic and difficult to kind of pinpoint. But yeah, I think they will have watched what Everton did at the Etihad at the weekend, and I think they will take heart from that. And I think they will also take a lot of heart from what they did in terms of nullifying Bayern Munich's threats, not just in Copenhagen, but also in Munich. Few teams restrict Bayern to that few clear-cut opportunities. So, yeah, I'd take a sort of different route to the guys. I do think they will be, or try and aim to be, as tight and compact as possible, play on the counter-attack where possible. And it's almost irrespective of how Copenhagen want to play here. City are going to dominate the ball, going to dominate territory. That's just what they do. They'll get 70% of the ball. And it's just going to be a case of, can they break Copenhagen down, which that's how I foresee it anyhow. And I think FCK can be, lively underdogs. They've only been beaten by 2 goals or more once since 2013 in this competition at home. Yes, they're going to be a little bit rusty, which isn't ideal. They could be undercooked, but I think City will just do a routine job on them, score a couple of goals, and kind of come away with a reasonable margin of victory and look ahead to the Etihad tie where they can just seal things off. But yeah, just the price that took me, actually, City to win under 3.5 goals, which is 2.16. You get a load of decent correct scores inside there. So never find opposing goals in Man City matches, obviously, but I've been led by the price here.
Okay, yeah, it does seem biggish price. We will lock in 2.16. City and under 3.5 goals and City and over 2.5 is the choice of Miguel and Adrian. That'll be available on insights.matchbook.com. If you're new to these podcasts, I do like picking a standout from the guys' cases, but in general, obviously, you can make your own choices there. And the full recap is available on our website. Second game, Leipzig versus Real Madrid. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. This is competitive betting heat. Leipzig 3.2, Madrid 2.32 favorites away. The draw is available at 3.8. Both teams to score, yes. Back to what we've been seeing this season regularly. 163 is the price there. The handicap sees Leipzig get a quarter goal head start at 196. The goal line here, 2.5, 171 for the over. So, Miguel, we'll put this on you. What have you made of Real Madrid's season? Because I guess up until that Girona game, it was looking like they were going to be really under pressure for the title. It seems they've pulled away a bit there, 5 points clear. They'll be targeting the Champions League as well, also, obviously, because it's Real Madrid.
Yeah, it was one of those classic performance of champions, wasn't it? Just the way Girona, obviously, one of the stories of the season, even if I think obviously they're part of the City football group, part owner, so it's not quite the fairy tale people portray, but still it added something different to the Spanish league. They would have been surprise winners, or certainly surprise challengers, and I suppose Madrid asserted what's what, and that fits into the story of Madrid's season, which is now all the more relevant for the Champions League, which is Bellingham's, I suppose the exact trajectory of his rise. We all knew he was going to be probably one of the best players in the world. I think everyone's been taken aback by just how quickly that has happened, and just how he's taken to life at Real Madrid. And he's been so crucial to this season. Even you would almost say, really, meaning they haven't really missed Benzema because he's occupied that role. Now, I suppose the truth of that will come in the Champions League, and we'll see. That might be the difference, whether we see, whether Bellingham's age and at this point of his career, whether there's still some way to go, or maybe he rises to it and does something really special. But of course, there is a danger that he's out for these 2 games. But given the form that he's been so important to generating from this Real Madrid, and given this is the Champions League knockouts, I'd still have them favourites here, obviously. And also, I think this game is set for a lot of goals. I mean, just looking at Leipzig's last few games, they've been so open. There was the 5-2 against Stuttgart recently. It doesn't exactly speak to the old tactical discipline of European football. And I think Madrid, as we've seen from their own group stage, particularly in those games against Napoli, they're willing to get into a blow for blow these days. So I'm going for, I would normally go for a Real Madrid win in these situations. I think the doubt over Bellingham just slightly tempers that. So instead I'm going for just a straight over 3.5, because I do think this actually could get up to 2-2, 3-2, 4-3, either way.
Okay, yeah, it's a really decent price too, 272. Mark, you're on similar lines here, and I guess Miguel touched on a lot of the points there with the goals angle. But Jude Bellingham, he's going to be a big loss.
He will be, yeah. He's got 20 goals for Real Madrid this season across all competitions. That's about a third of their overall goals total, which is absolutely astonishing, really. I think he was about 10-1 to score 10 goals or more for them this season, and that was just blown out of the water within the first 6 weeks of the season. He's either scored or assisted in every Champions League game, and if you look at his underlying metrics, he's created the most chances from open play in the competition this season too. So it's not just his goal scoring ability, his creative side of the game is going to be a big loss. I think Brahim Diaz is a reasonable player, but he's not Jude Bellingham, so there is definitely a step down there. Ancelotti might look to play Modric, just give them an extra body in midfield instead of Bellingham, but we'll have to wait and see, really. Either way, they're going to be missing a few key players: Bellingham, Rudiger, Militao, Alaba, Courtois. At the weekend, they had to play a centre-half partnership of Carvajal and Tchouameni because of injuries. Nacho is back at least for midweek. So, yeah, defensively, there's definitely doubts over Real Madrid coming into this match, and you could say there's doubts about them going forward, but anyone who saw Vinicius play at the weekend would say that's probably not the case. He was absolutely terrifying against Girona. Rodrigo as well in great form too. So I'd expect those two to make Leipzig pay at some point in this match. But defensively, absolutely Leipzig can get at them. I think they can get at any team, really. Going forward, they do pack a punch. I'd almost kind of park their domestic form, because I think this team, when they come up against good teams, especially in Leipzig, do tend to rise to the occasion. They've given Bayern Munich some really good games this season, Bayer Leverkusen some really good games, Dortmund too. They've been scoring freely against all the big boys in Germany. They, of course, beat Real Madrid here last season in the group stage 3-2. I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw something similar. Sesko's been playing really well. Openda, Xavi as well. Daniel Olmo's back from injury too. So going forward, they've got so many threats. And you look at their Champions League record; they've failed to score once in the last 20 home league Champions League games. And if you look at their last 13 home Champions League ties, 12 have seen both teams scoring, and 11 have gone over 2.5 goals. So I'm going to combine those two markets together, overs and BTTS. You get 183. I think I'm more than happy to go with that. I think Leipzig will absolutely take a proactive, aggressive approach here, knowing that getting a good result here before going to the Bernabeu is key. And I think Real Madrid might enjoy playing in those transitions and counterattacks where they can be so dangerous. So, yeah, like Miguel, I can see this game being much more the sort of 3-2 to Madrid playing in Napoli, rather than sort of the Madrid games against Union Berlin, shall we say, in the group stage. I think going forward, they will cause Leipzig problems, but vice versa too. And defensively, I haven't got a huge amount of faith in either team right now.
Okay, that's currently priced at 183, over 2.5 goals, and both teams to score. Real Madrid's price is currently around 232. We got a comment in on YouTube, Adrian, just asking about that price, and is it backable if you think Madrid are the better team. You've got a different sort of angle. We see this a lot in NFL team totals. Don't really use them as much in football, but I guess this is an interesting angle. They don't have to win the game here for this bet to land.
Yeah, I was a little bit along the lines of what the guys were talking about. I don't know if I can fully trust in Real Madrid to win the game. Obviously, they lost this 3-2 last year. With Bellingham out as well, it creates a little bit of uncertainty. They'll probably win the game, but I can't back them. So I wanted to look for something else. And yeah, it really stood out. I thought, well, Real Madrid always score goals. I think even without Bellingham, with Rodrigo and Vinicius Jr. so outstanding, and other players to come in. It's not as if they're playing with 10 men, Brahim Diaz is the likely replacement, but if it's not him, it's going to be a good player, isn't it? So I don't think that suddenly means Real Madrid will stop scoring. I'm going to go for Real Madrid to score 2 goals or more. So over 1.5 goals for Real Madrid. It's something they've done in their last 5 Champions League games. It's something they've done in 19 of 25 matches in all competitions, or 19 of their last 25 matches in all competitions. And in a shootout type game, which is what the guys have been describing, I think they're more than capable of doing this. Obviously, they went 6 from 6 in terms of wins in the group stage. Leipzig haven't kept a clean sheet in any of 13 Champions League home games. So Real Madrid are going to score 1, pretty much certainly. And I think they're more than good enough to score 2. Fast breaks will be the big thing here. They're both brilliant. They're the 2 top dogs, actually, when it comes to shots from fast breaks in the Champions League. So when one team comes at them, the other one will probably be at their most dangerous, looking to spring a breakaway at the other end. And I think, Vinicius and Rodrigo will be particularly effective in that department. So, for me, attack might be the best form of defence for Real Madrid, especially if those centre-backs aren't fit, because to play a full-back and a central midfielder at centre-half against Leipzig is not ideal. I don't think they're going to want to soak up too much pressure here. So they may feel they need to score 2 or 3 goals to win this game. And that's what I'm going to back.
Okay, that's available at 191 on the Match of Betting Exchange. Over 2.5 in both teams to score is 183, also available on the Match of Betting Exchange. But we're going to lock in over 3.5 goals, Miguel, for 272. Just saw a comment there earlier saying classic Miguel with the over 3.5 goals. So to welcome back from Owen McIntosh, to welcome back the over 3.5 goals to the National Football Podcast, and the hope for many more, Miguel. We're going to lock that in
This is the modern Champions League, it feeds into it. It's not like the away goal to the 90s and 1-0 wins.
Yeah, it's always scary back in the 3.5s, isn't it? And it's not
I'm waiting for the day. I don't think the day is far away where Miguel backs over 5.5. Do you? I think that day is around the corner.
Yeah, and it'll be available at 2.92 or something like that, Adrian. So obviously the goal lines have got out of
next
control.
West Ham game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, would have been a winner there at the London Stadium yesterday. We'll move on. Bit of disagreement on the guys, and just a comment there from James on YouTube. All the guys' picks will be available this afternoon on insights.matchbook.com, or just search Matchbook Insights wherever you get it, or keep an eye on our social channels. I know we see a lot of people heading over there to keep an eye on the guys' picks, particularly if they don't get a chance to catch the full show. We move on to PSG versus Real Sociedad. Disagreement on this game, so we'll get to that and start with Adrian once we have a look at the betting. PSG 174 favourites. Real Sociedad 5.8. The draw is 395. Both teams to score, yes, 50-50 market-ish. No, the slight fab at 192. The Asian handicap line, Sociedad getting a 3/4 goal head start at 204. The goal line 2.5 unders available. The favourite there, 194. Adrian, take it away here. I mean, you look at PSG on paper, they're flying in Ligue 1. Really, I guess, will be giving this Champions League a good rattle. So maybe bring up some of the concerns you might have for them in the overall picture before deciding on this game.
Yeah, I don't think they'll win it. PSG, I don't think will win it. They're nowhere near in the class, I don't think, of a City or even a Real Madrid. They struggled, didn't they, in both the games against Newcastle? So I think there's still a few flaws in there. But I think they're good enough to win this game, if I'm honest. But it's more really in regards to Real Sociedad not being maybe in the best form themselves. They've only scored 3 goals, Sociedad, in their last 8 matches. Won 1 of their last 8 in La Liga as a consequence. Not been letting in many. I think they've only let in 4 goals in those 8 matches as well. Loads of clean sheets. And of course, at the back end of that group stage, I think they had a couple of goalless draws as well. So they are a tough nut to crack, Real Sociedad. That is for sure. But are they going to pack it enough of a punch to score in the game? And that's where I'm coming at. So for me, PSG, even against very, very good defences, would almost always score when you've got Mbappe and the others available, obviously with Ramos and Kolo Muani, etc. Mbappe rested at the weekend, by the way, as was Zaire, Emery, a few others as well. So they'll come into this one nice and fresh. I can't see PSG not scoring. And if they do score, then I think they've got a very good chance of winning the game, because Real Sociedad just have stopped scoring goals. So yeah, just in terms of numbers, PSG have won 12 of the last 15 at home in all comps. They've failed to score in just one home game this season. So I think it'll be a tight game, much tighter than a lot of people might anticipate. But yeah, I think it'll be a close run thing. And Sociedad might end up going through on aggregate. I wouldn't rule that out, but I think that PSG will edge this. The two games that they won in the group stage were wins to 0, of course, at home to Dortmund, at home to Milan. So they've saved some of their better performances for the Parc des Princes on European nights. And I think they might have to grind their way past Real Sociedad. So for me, I'm going to go, it's a nice price as well, 2.86 PSG to win to 0.
Okay, 286 PSG to win to 0, or pair it with both teams to score no. Mark, what on Adrian's point that he sort of does see the Real Sociedad case, but doesn't really want to be with them away in Paris?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I think it's a tricky game. He's right. When the draw was made, I think people assumed it would be a reasonably straightforward match for PSG, and that I don't believe that to be the case. I don't believe this is an easy tie for PSG whatsoever. They do have a good, strong home record in Paris in the Champions League. They do get Mbappe back from a slight injury recently, so they'll be gunning for it, absolutely. And they showed against Milan and Dortmund what they are capable of in Paris. But I think Newcastle showed that you can frustrate them for large periods. I'm sure they were quite fortuitous to pick up that point in Paris, but based on the balance of play. But there is a blueprint there, and I think Real Sociedad absolutely can be awkward, miserly, and difficult to beat. Really, they do come into this game without OHaire, their captain. He's a really key contributor, which is a bit of a blow. But they're a team who are much better than the sum of their parts. There's no individual star names or star players. Bryce Mendes, Umar Sadiq will play in forward areas. They're very decent. They're very capable, and they've got a unity about them, which PSG could only dream of. Really, if you look at the squad, they're a remarkable story. Actually, I'm sure there's probably been pieces written about their campaign so far, but they had 11 homegrown players in the Champions League squad. Their head coach Imanol has really deeply ingrained roots with the club as well. It's a brilliant success story. They topped Inter's group, held them home and away, qualified unbeaten, kept more clean sheets, conceded fewer goals, and faced fewer shots on target than anyone else in the group stage. And look, Benfica and Salzburg aren't the same size of previous campaigns, but that's a huge achievement for a side who aren't used to playing at this standard. And I think if you look at their style, their approach, they are aggressive. They do press high. They play with intensity. They're very hardworking, but they're also tidy in possession, and they don't often lose. And they don't often lose by big margins. If you look at their domestic record, just 5 La Liga losses all season, none of which arrived by a 2-goal margin or more. Now, it's worth noting that 3 of the 5 defeats did come away at Real Madrid, Athletic, and Atletico, but they've been very, very competitive on all of them. So, if they are to lose in Paris, I think it might come down to the odd goal at best, really. And the Achilles heel will be their probably lack of a finishing touch in forward areas. But on the flip side, PSG have only kept 4 clean sheets in 16, if you exclude their record against lower league opposition. So there was a price, not a matchbook, that did sort of stand out here. PSG to win by exactly 1 goal. That's 3.6. I think that's quite interesting. But in terms of here, I will nominate Real Sociedad +1 on the Asian handicap, which requires PSG to win by 2 goals or more for the bet to lose. And yeah, I just think Real Sociedad will batten down the hatches. They're very well drilled. They're very capable. And I think they'll look to try and survive this tie and then perhaps see what they're made of back at Anoeta in San Sebastian and hopefully oust PSG for the 6th time in 8 seasons at the last 16 stage.
Okay, that's currently priced 177 Real Sociedad +1.0. I guess, Miguel, you can take the best of both Mark and Adrian's case and sort of put it in a nice little under 2.5 package.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's maybe thinking along similar lines, maybe primarily guided by Real Sociedad's defensive record. They did lose to my local team, Osasuna, at the weekend, 1-0 at the Anoeta. But I mean, as tight as this game is, it's one of these that's informed by far larger long-term forces in this Champions League game. One, the Real Sociedad are almost like they have that classic situation now. And I think this is going to be a trend in Spanish football over the next while because it's become more open in terms of the top 4 or who gets into the top 4, where a club gets into the Champions League and then immediately struggles to adapt to basically the rigors of it, the rigors of a domestic campaign and this kind of more demanding Champions League campaign. I think that's fed into why Real Sociedad are now 7th. and why almost has had to be this kind of adaptation in their approach. It's almost like the sign of a team that when they're struggling goes back to basics by locking it down, which is what happened. And the other side, PSG haven't quite gone back to basics, but they've been affected by their own long-term struggles in the Champions League, where finally, after years, and something that Mbappe wanted before he came to this realization that he probably has to leave this summer, where he wanted a proper modern approach. That is what Luis Enrique has been given license to do. Now we'll see how far it actually goes, given this is PSG, but people at the club say it's different this time. And I suppose, to be fair to them, that can be witnessed in how, partly in order to play Luis Enrique's high-intensity approach, they've got rid of all the stars on kind of on high wages, players in late 20s and early 30s who aren't really given to that sort of almost German-style running and pressing. And they've got, I think it's now the fourth youngest squad in the competition. And Mbappe, who's only 25, but obviously a completely different dimension of player, looks so almost senior now in that side. But it does mean there's it's quite a weird one, because even though for years we've criticized PSG in this regard and how, just how wasteful the project was, whatever about the ownership and all that, but even in terms of kind of just this indulgent star system, having the very stars there still gave them a bit of an oar in the Champions League. And even though you didn't think they were good enough to win it, you probably thought in any individual game, especially in the last 16, say, against a more forgiving team rather than a Madrid or a Barcelona who they've gone out to in the past, that they should do it. Whereas this suddenly feels like not quite 50-50, but it feels like because of all these forces coming together, the margins are narrower. And bringing all that around, and primarily guided by La Real's ability to at least keep games tight, I've gone for the very low of under 2.5. I was leaning towards a PSG win, but I think there is a potential for a 0-0 in this.
Okay, yeah, under 2.5, 195.
I just wanted to say as well. Sorry, Dan. I just wanted to say I don't want to piss all over Miguel's bonfire with Osasuna's big victory at the weekend. But what I meant to say as well on Real Sociedad is they're in the middle of a very important kind of phase at the minute. They played Copa del Rey semi-finals last midweek, Champions League last 16 this midweek. They did make a lot of changes at the weekend. I'm not saying they're not prioritising La Liga, because obviously finishing top four is still a big achievement for them, but they are very much putting a lot into the Copa del Rey and the Champions League. That's almost their focus at the minute. So, and they did, if Miguel allows me, they battered Osasuna at the weekend. It's just one of those games, really.
Jeez, that's harsh, Miguel, isn't it? It's a results business at the end of the day.
That's how we take it.
and a last-minute case for, yeah.
The way, what I suppose, Real Sociedad would see PSG as a giant, whereas Osasuna would see Real Sociedad as not necessarily a giant, but I suppose a bigger club who've taken players off them in the past. So
yeah,
any win.
We won't get down that road, Mark. And saying all that, the late bid for the Sociedad plus 1.0 was unsuccessful, as I do think that price that Adrian touched on, PSG, both teams are scoring now 286. Let's lock that in as the official bet. Lazio versus Bayern Munich.
I know how to get our bets promoted now as the official podcast pick, Dan. You just picked the biggest price, so I'm going to two years working together, Mark. You finally figured it out.
Maverick,
isn't
he?
I love a juicy price when you see, oh geez, that's nearly 2-1, 3.0. Yeah, let's lock that in. We will move on. We'll go to Lazio Bayern. Lazio 5.5 underdogs here. Bayern, see a bit of money there moving in real time. 174. The draw is 4.1. Both teams have scored, yes. 176. No's available 2-1-2. Lazio getting a 3/4 goal head start at 2-0-4. The goal line here is 2.5, 179 for the over. Mark OHaire, we'll go to you on this one and give us your thoughts on the game on the weekend. I mean, a lot of people would have watched that over the Premier League game, which is just shows you how big a game it was. Bayern are in massive trouble in the Bundesliga right now.
They are a head scratcher, really, from the off. No one really can escape criticism, starting with Thomas Tuchel, who decided to field a back three for a very rare occasion, which didn't include De Ligt, but did include Eric Dyer, who had a disastrous game. He gave the ball away dozens of times, made dozens of fouls. Just bless his heart. It was an awful appearance. But everything went wrong. Thomas Muller was absolutely apoplectic after the game in terms of trying to sort of understand what went wrong. But every single player was culpable, including the last minute when you're losing 2-0 in stoppage time and you sent, his only decision, Manny Neuer decided to go up for a corner, and obviously Leverkusen break and score the third goal. But it's just brainless decisions like that which will really cost Bayern, because the gap now between themselves and Leverkusen is 5 points. But what would have been a 2-goal difference in goal difference between the two clubs is now 4, just based on that stupid decision. So you could effectively say the current points difference between the two is almost 6 points, which is, it's not going to be easy considering Leverkusen are unbeaten in every game this season across all competitions. It's absolutely astonishing what they put together, and we're in February now. But in terms of Bayern, how they pick themselves up, it's difficult to know. When they were demolished by Frankfurt in the autumn, they did bounce back with a really resounding 3-0 win against Stuttgart. But then when they lost in the cup to third-tier opposition, Saarbrücken, and recently when they lost their last game, they haven't really bounced back in the same sort of emphatic fashion. There's real sort of talk that there is a lot of unhappy players behind the scenes, not just with Tuchel, but with each other. Kimmich will at least come back into the team this time around. But they've got injuries. They're not united right now. And it wasn't just Eric Dyer. Boye, the signing in January, looked really out of place. And they've still got that big defensive midfield hole, which has been there since Tuchel arrived, which he's demanded be fixed. And they've just not been able to fill that void. So they're up against it. Ordinarily, I would always kind of look at this as an opportunity, as a Bayern bounce back moment. I'm just not sure it's going to be quite as impressive as perhaps Bayern sides of old, and they've still got a very strong record in Europe, especially away from home. They are pretty easy winners of their group coming through, and I do feel that if they can put in a 7 out of 10 performance, they should be good enough to come away from Lazio with a victory. But the price is still short enough. My issue really here is Lazio. They have really missed Milinkovic-Savic this year. He was sold to Saudi. His loss in midfield has been massively damaging. Their defensive numbers at the Stadio Olimpico have been very, very strong. But if you look under the metrics, it's not actually been anywhere near as firm a foundation as last season. And whereas last year you had Immobile and Zaccagni sort of linking up, providing loads of attacking quality and finishing ability, Immobile started to look his age, and Zaccagni's injured. So I've got concerns about Lazio. Obviously, Maurizio Sarri there. This is not the same sort of team as we saw Sarri at Napoli. They're much more functional, and they're sort of reliant on key moments and individuals to be as awkward as perhaps they need to be. Because you look at some of their games in this competition, especially at the Olimpico, where they've got their results, were made to toil long and hard against Feyenoord, similar against Celtic too, and then they required a goalkeeping intervention in the last minute against Atletico. So I do worry about their ability to step up in class, and that's been shown domestically too. Inter have schooled them very, very comfortably twice already this season. So I think if Bayern do show up with a revenge in mind, almost trying to put the record straight after the weekend, I would back them to win this game, but not at that price. I'd include under 4.5 goals, and you get to odds against at 2.08. And I think that's probably fair enough. Lazio, I worry about them in forward areas. Have they got enough, even if Bayern are a little bit ropey defensively? And I just think from a Tuchel perspective, just shut it up and just try and get a job done and move on, because they will win the reverse game regardless.
Okay, that's actually gone up a bit, 2.12, Mark. And that's the current price for Bayern, and under 4.5 goals. The same price, incidentally, Adrian, as under 2.5 goals.
Yeah, that's my pick. Yeah, I'm going to go for unders here. I can't really hang my hat on either team for the reasons outlined by Mark, really. I think that Bayern, obviously with that bloodied nose, you don't know how they're going to react, do you? They might come back and be really resilient and come out fighting, or they might be, low on confidence, in which case they might, not be as fluent. And they'll certainly want to be better without the ball than they were against Leverkusen. So I don't think we'll see a swashbuckling Bayern, which is why I'm leaning towards unders. And then you look at Lazio and the home record. I bow to Mark's sort of superior knowledge of the game states, but they have had a lot of clean sheets at home. They've 3 home clean sheets in a row and 10 in their last 13 at the Olimpico in all comps, which is incredible, really. And some of the teams are pretty good. Drew 0-0 at home to Napoli, 0-0 against Roma, did lose 2-0 against Inter. But you'll notice the pattern is that they're all under 2.5 goals, those games, as were the 3 home games in the group stage as well, all under 2.5 goals. So yeah, I'm just putting it together with them knowing their limitations, knowing they've got to be functional, got to stay in the tie. Bayern lower on confidence than they might ordinarily be, need to focus on tightening up the basics. This might be, this might not be a great game. So I'm going to go for under 2.5 as well, because the price is not bad, 2.12.
Okay, yeah. And Miguel, final chat to you on this game here. You're leaning towards Mark, but yeah, a little bit on the Leverkusen Bayern game. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's a brilliant story that Xabi Alonso's gone there. We've got a competitive Bundesliga, probably arguably as competitive as it's been for the last few years.
Yeah, German football needs it. And of course, let's not forget, given this, I suppose, criticism of Tuchel, who a manager I do like, covered him a lot at Chelsea, where I think he did an excellent job. Not least winning the Champions League, but also in the way he won it. But they shouldn't have won the title last season either, which is remarkable given, I suppose, Bayern's financial power. Also, given the quality of that squad, I would say, bar its obvious holes. And I mean, touching on that, I suppose it's amazing. I mean, given they wanted Palhinha in the summer, that was expected to be sorted in January. And then they've gone, I suppose, for a compromise option in Eric Dyer, not least because he can play defensive midfield and centre half. But he's, I suppose, got a bit of adaptation to do himself, as we saw at the weekend. But from all that, my mind is probably drawn to a game I was at. And it was another one in the Champions League that followed a bad Bayern beating when they lost 5-1 in December, just before going to Old Trafford. And to be fair, they responded with just one of these kind of ultra-professional displays. Musiala was superb. And I think they'll do similar here, all the more so because for all United's problems this season that have been, I suppose, resolved a little bit for now, Lazio don't have United's quality. Again, I mean, they're fairly far off the pace in Serie A in terms of the distance now. The Champions League, given what they did last season. Again, you feel some of that kind of adjusting to the calendar has come into it. But equally, it's been a bit kind of, I'd say this season at least, the flip side of Sarri, and sometimes it can be given to a prosaic football rather than that sort of kind of possession game at its best. And I do think Bayern, I think they'll respond with a bit of force, a point to prove, and cut through them. But and looking at Adrian's price as well, if what we've gone for the same as Mark here, it does at least cover a low-scoring game as well. But I think Bayern will respond.
Yeah, chance of all these bets to come in here under 2.5 goals. Same price as Bayern and under 4.5 goals. So as Mark alluded to there, I've actually got nowhere to go with this selection here. But I'll go with Bayern and under 4.5 goals. The majority reels at 2.12. All the recap there available inside matchbook.com. Europa League podcast matchbook is going to be a 2-minute segment here, Adrian Clarke. So you have a pick for us in the round of 32. This is the format change they did in the Europa League. I did like it. It keeps the group stage a bit more interesting. Now we've got teams trying to get into the round of 16. So these are obviously Arsenal's group stage opponents. So you've watched a lot of them this season.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, they got battered at Arsenal, but they did win, didn't they, over in France? And yeah, I fancy Lens to beat Freiburg. I was looking at the games and yeah, it was a standout for me because Lens at home are fantastic domestically and on the international stage. I had a rotten start to the season, but they've climbed rapidly. I think they're up into the top 6 now, and they don't lose very many games. And certainly at home, it's a little bit of a fortress. Amazing atmosphere. Absolutely love covering that game. They've lost just one of their last 13 home games in major European competitions. They've won 9 of those, and they've scored in 28 consecutive home games in Europe. So I fancy them to score, maybe more than one. El Wahi's a pretty good young striker. Remember him from the group stage. And I'm just looking at Freiburg, decent enough side, but, we were comfortably beaten 2-0 at West Ham. And they haven't got a great away record this season. They've already lost at Leverkusen, at Bayern, at Stuttgart, at Dortmund, at Leipzig. Okay, they're all tough games, but, they've not even picked up a draw amongst them. So this is tough. It's intimidating. And I think that Lens, having narrowly dropped out of the Champions League, might want to put together a run go deep in this competition because they're pretty tough to beat. So yeah, 1.86 I think it is for Lons to beat Freiburg.
Let's lock it in there and move on to our long shot section. Mark, we've covered a lot of these picks here, so there's a little adaptations on what we've selected, but give us your case for Man City 2-0 away to Copenhagen, which on the face of this price looks tad big for me.
Yeah, it looks fair enough, doesn't it? 6-1, 7.0 for Man City to win 2-0 in Copenhagen. It's a tough gig this midweek, I thought, for a long shot, but this is the one that stood out. So FCK are 1.8 not to score. Now, City, I know, haven't been exactly watertight for a good few months, but they are going to dominate the ball, dominate the territory, and I think FCK's opportunities might be few and far between. So if the market suspects that they won't score, the correct score market does seem to have a bit of appeal, especially for me there at the 2-0 at 7.0. Yeah, I don't expect them to blow the house down, but their extra quality should show. And it's not just the starting 11, it's the players they can bring off the bench to be decisive. And Copenhagen may well be rusty after their winter break, but they don't often get beat comfortably in Copenhagen. So, City are strong favourites, defending champions by far and away the shortest priced side on the four teams or the four favourites on show this midweek. So in theory, they should be winning this game with a bit of room to spare, but not expecting them to absolutely batter FCK. So 2-0 for me.
If it's 2-0 at half time, are you a happy man, Mark, or are you ripping the slip up?
Yeah, the bet's gone.
It's gone, isn't it? No, we've been there so many times. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Adrian, you're taking away your long shot. It's a very interesting one, this one.
Well, I had the same one as Miguel, and I thought we can't have the two the same. So I've flipped it, and it would be a shock, and so that's why it is a long shot. But I just, based on what I saw of that performance against Leverkusen and the things that were wrong about that performance, they've got issues, Bayern Munich, and it's twice now they've lost to nil already in this calendar year. Werder Bremen, of course, beat them as well. So I don't think they're coming into this as a sure thing at all. And I know that Lazio have got limitations. I know they're nothing special on this stage in the last 16 of the Champions League. But Sarri is a smart coach. Tuchel's under pressure. They might just nick a low-scoring win here. And if you fancy them to do that, it's 7.2. Lazio and under 3.5 goals at 7.2. They are the home side. And wait for this. This bet has landed in 8 of Lazio's last 13 home games. So, when they do win at home, it's normally in a tight affair. So, yeah, if you think there's going to be a hangover, and there's a chance there could be, then this might be the pick for you.
Okay, if it's 1-1 with 5 minutes to go, all three bets are alive there with Mark and Miguel's pick and Adrian. So, yeah, that could be set up fairly nicely. Adrian wanted this long shot, Miguel, but you have it, so take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, given everything we were saying earlier, and I think we were pretty much it was unanimity on this. I was surprised at how high this price was, but I've gone for a very, very simple and very classic in that sense. Maybe running away from recent trends with myself. A 1-0 to PSG at home, which would also keep the tie open, obviously very open, really, and maybe just reflects just that. The fact that PSG have that bit more superiority, Real Sociedad's recent struggles. The one variable, I suppose, is because it is Champions League where Real Sociedad raise it and see a certain vulnerability in PSG. But I think everything just points to this being quite, a logical choice for the game.
Okay, yeah. And if our long shot record, if you did have a £20 stake on each of the three guys' long shots in the group stage, you would be up plus £167 on the match betting exchange. And that includes your 2% commission. So profitable following the guys. But bear in mind the long shots. It is a long game over the course of a season. Best bets time. Mark, back to you. We'll kick it off with your best bet.
Very exciting, this, isn't it? Man City again. Man City to win under 3.5 goals. I've already sort of highlighted it to 216-ish, I think it is. Yeah, it's probably 50-50 whether Copenhagen contribute to the score sheet. But do I see City running riot and scoring 4 or more? Probably not. They've got a big game against Chelsea to come at the weekend too, and they'll be more than confident about finishing any sort of job in the second leg in Manchester too. So Pep might be managing minutes with his players, managing the workload. So I suspect they'll control the game, squeeze the life out of Copenhagen, grab a couple of goals and move on, really. But I do really like the goals in Leipzig as well. So call it my next best at Leipzig.
Yeah, okay. Miguel's got that. If it's 3-0 City after 60 minutes, are you a happy man, Mark? Or is that bet done again? Or what's...
Yeah, I think semi. Yeah,
take
it's
Haaland.
probably in the
Yeah.
balance, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a tough watch regardless of Mark's both best bet and long shot. Miguel, you're Leipzig, Madrid. You're expecting loads of goals, and you went with this.
Haven't been restrained in the long shots in terms of goals. Maybe revert to type here, and I think it's just so attractive given that what we know this game will be, which will be a back and forth, and it almost comes down to whether chances are taken, which I think they will be. In fact, I'm almost talking myself into thinking that 3.5 is a bit on the conservative side now. But
272.
Yeah. I think given that, for me, it's a no-brainer.
Okay. And on a similar theme, Adrian, you do like this bet. You made a good case as well. Over a team total here, and I touched on it. It's a one that we don't see a lot in football, but it's very popular in the NFL, just for people that aren't aware. So yeah, it's a good way of getting on side with one team and not having to support them defensively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I don't think you can fully trust Real Madrid to win the game. We're all expecting goals. It's styles make fights, and I think the styles mean that these two teams will make it fairly end to end. And even without Jude Bellingham, they've got enough goal powers, haven't they? Real Madrid, Vinicius Junior in brilliant form, Rodrigo too. They've got others that are more than capable of chipping in. Real Madrid have scored over 1.5 goals in their last 5 Champions League games. They've scored 2 or more in 19 of 25 games in all competitions this season. Leipzig haven't kept a clean sheet in Europe at home in 13 matches. I think they're likely to concede 1. All I'm backing on here is that they concede 1 more. And yeah, I'm pretty confident actually that Real Madrid can go there and get a couple of goals. Will it be enough to win the game? Who knows?
Okay, yeah. All those bets will be recapped on insights.matchbook.com, as we alluded to. My thanks to Mark, Adrian, and Miguel. Mark and Adrian and myself will be back on Thursday. Then the 4 of us will be back once again on Monday. And it is, as we touched on, non-stop club football right until the end of May, start of June. But until then, enjoy the week's Champions League. And if you are having a bet on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, please enjoy, but do so responsibly. We'll chat to you on Thursday. Bye-bye.